Hey everyone, welcome. Today, we're going to climb a mountain, but you don't even have to leave your seat. We're going to uncover this incredible story that the plants on a mountainside are telling us. A story about our entire planet, believe it or not. All right, so let's just jump right in with a question. You ever see a big, tall mountain and notice how different the top is from the bottom? The top is all bare and rocky, but the valley down below is super lush and green. So what's the deal with that? What is going on there? Well, to get to the bottom of this, we're going to tag along with a young explorer. Her name is Salima, and she's off to the Himalayas for summer camp. And trust me, what she sees on her trip, it's the key to solving this whole mystery. Okay, so here we are joining Salima on her big adventure. Picture this. She's on a bus, heading up into the Himalayas toward Manali. Her face is basically glued to the window, just watching the entire world change as that bus starts to climb higher and higher. So at the very beginning, down in the foothills, it's a totally different scene. She's surrounded by these really deep, dense jungles. We're talking forests of sal and teak trees, just thick, sprawling, and absolutely buzzing with life. But then, as the bus keeps climbing, winding its way up the mountain, something starts to happen. Salima looks out, and the jungle is just gone. It's disappeared. And in its place, she sees these totally different trees, super tall, majestic, with pointy leaves and those classic cone shapes. Yep, those are coniferous trees. And you know what else she sees? Amidst all that green, there's this amazing pop of color. It's these bright, beautiful flowers, rhododendrons. It just adds another layer to this incredible landscape that's changing right before her eyes. Okay, so the bus is getting even higher now, getting close to the famous Rotang Pass, and boom, the landscape totally shifts again. The tall trees? Vanished. Now it's just short grass everywhere. And get this, she's even starting to see patches of snow. Think about that, from a deep jungle to a snowy landscape all in one bus ride. How cool is that? So, everything Salima just saw, it might seem random, but it's not. Not at all. There's a really powerful scientific reason for all of this. So now, let's dig into the why behind her whole trip. All right, the big idea here has a fancy name, altitudinal zonation. But don't let the name fool you. It's actually pretty simple. It just means that as you go up higher, the whole ecosystem changes in these predictable layers or zones. And why? Because the basic rules of the environment, what can survive where, are completely changing with the altitude. It really all boils down to this super simple chain reaction. Step 1, you change your height. Step 2, that changes the climate. And step 3, the change in climate dictates what kind of plants can grow there. It's a perfect cause and effect chain, one thing leading right to the next. And, it's not just about the temperature getting colder as you go up. There's more to it. We're talking about other really important factors, like how much moisture is in the air, how steep the land is, and even how deep the soil is. All of these things together create the recipe for what can grow in a certain spot. Okay, so what's really cool is that everything Salima saw on her trip, it fits perfectly into the big categories that scientists use to classify plants all over the world. Generally speaking, we can group natural vegetation into 3 main types. So here's the breakdown. First up, you've got forests. These guys need a lot of rain and warmth to grow that thick, dense cover of trees. Then you have grasslands. They pop up in places with a medium amount of rain. And finally, you've got shrubs. Think thorny bushes and scrubs that are tough enough to grow in really dry areas. And the amazing part? Salima basically saw a version of all 3 on her one mountain trip. Okay, get ready, because this is where the story gets really interesting. So Salima gets back from her trip and she's telling her dad all about it. Now, her dad has traveled everywhere all over the globe, and he's about to help her connect the dots in a way that is just mind-blowing. So her dad says something that completely changes how she sees her trip. He tells her, the Himalayas have almost all variety of vegetation which one can see while moving from the equator to the polar region. Whoa. Just let that sink in for a minute. So what does that even mean? It means that climbing one single tall mountain is basically like taking a trek from the equator all the way to the North Pole. Starting at the bottom, in those lush, jungle-like forests, that's like being in the tropics. Then, when you move up into those coniferous forests, that's like being in the temperate zones like Europe or North America. And finally, reaching that bare, grassy peak, that's the tundra. It's just like being in the polar regions. It's literally a world tour, but instead of going sideways, you're going straight up. All right, so we've been on this awesome journey with Salima, and we've unpacked the science behind it all. But you know what? The real adventure? Well, that starts right now, and it starts with you. The big takeaway here is that this isn't just some story about the Himalayas. This stuff is happening everywhere. So the next time you're outside, I want you to be the explorer. Seriously, just look around. Your local park, a little hill nearby, even the different kinds of plants you see on your street. And ask yourself this one simple question. What story are the plants in my neighborhood telling? What clues are they giving you about the climate, the soil, about your own unique little corner of the world? Pretty cool, huh? Happy exploring. All right, today we're heading deep into the world's forests to tackle a question that I bet you've wondered about, especially when the seasons start to change. So let's jump right in. It seems like such a simple question, doesn't it? But the answer is pretty incredible. See, it's not random at all. It's really a story of two totally different and, frankly, brilliant survival strategies that trees have been perfecting for millions and millions of years. Okay, first up, let's talk about the evergreens. You know the ones. They're the trees that seem to live in this endless summer, always looking lush and green. Their whole game plan is built around one thing: taking full advantage of abundance. I mean, the clue is right there in the name, isn't it? Evergreen. So, unlike a lot of other trees, they don't just drop all their leaves in one go. Nope, they hang on to them, constantly photosynthesizing, constantly growing all year long. So the big question is, how do they manage to do that? Well, it really all boils down to one thing: the weather. You see, in those hot tropical spots right near the equator, it pretty much rains all the time. There's no big dry season that forces everything to grind to a halt. And when you've got a constant supply of water, well, you can afford to be always on. And this nonstop growth is what creates the absolutely incredible environment we know as the tropical rainforest. I mean, the trees here grow so thick and so close together that their tops form this massive canopy. It's like a living ceiling of leaves so dense that it can block almost all the sunlight from ever touching the forest floor. And this is where you find those amazing hardwoods like rosewood and mahogany. And just to give you an idea of the sheer scale we're talking about here, think about this. The rainforest in Brazil is so enormous, and it pumps out so much oxygen that people literally call it the lungs of the earth. That's not just a poetic phrase, it's a huge reminder of just how important these forests are for the entire planet. And of course, these forests are just absolutely teeming with life. And I'm talking incredible life, like the anaconda. We're talking about one of the biggest snakes in the world, powerful enough to hunt and eat something as huge as a crocodile. If that doesn't tell you how rich this ecosystem is, I don't know what will. Okay, but here's the thing. Not every forest gets to live in that kind of paradise with rain all year round. So a whole lot of other trees had to come up with a different plan, a totally different but just as clever strategy: conservation. So, say hello to the deciduous trees. And their signature move? They shed their leaves. Now, you might think that's a sign of weakness, but it's the exact opposite. It is an incredibly smart adaptation for getting through the tough times, like a really long dry season. Just think about it for a second. Leaves are constantly losing water vapor into the air. So when water is suddenly super scarce during a dry spell, having all those leaves is actually a huge liability. So what do? They drop them. They basically go into a low power mode to save every single precious drop of water they have until the rains finally come back. So let's put them head to head, right? On one side, you've got the evergreens. Their climate driver is constant rain, so their strategy is all about nonstop growth. On the other side, you've got the deciduous trees. They're dealing with big seasonal changes, so their strategy is to shed their leaves and conserve everything they've got. It's really just two different problems with two totally brilliant solutions. We often call these the monsoon forests, and you'll find them in places like large parts of India, northern Australia, and Central America. They're also the source of amazing hardwoods like teak and shisham, and they're home to some of the world's most incredible animals. We're talking tigers, lions, elephants, and all sorts of monkeys. But the story doesn't stop with just those two big strategies. Some forests have to deal with even more extreme conditions, and that's forced them to become real specialists, true masters of survival. Okay, let's take a trip to the Mediterranean. Now, the big challenge here isn't just a dry season in general. It's very specific: really hot, really dry summers, followed by mild, rainy winters. So the question becomes, how do you possibly survive a long, baking hot summer like that? Well, they've evolved some really cool tricks.
For one, they grow thick bark that kind of acts like insulation against all that heat. And two, their leaves often have this waxy coating. Now, both of these things do the same job. They reduce something called transpiration. And all transpiration is the way plants lose water to the air through their leaves. It's kind of like how we sweat.
And you know what? This incredible ability to hold onto water is exactly why the region is so famous for growing fruit. Think about it. Olives, figs, grapes, they all absolutely thrive there. It's really no surprise people call these areas the orchards of the world. All right, now let's travel way up to the higher latitudes, to the coniferous forests. You might also know them as the taiga. Up here, the problem isn't heat. It's the total opposite. Long, brutal, cold winters where all the water is just frozen solid. So these trees, the tall softwoods like pine and cedar, they needed a whole different survival kit. Those needles they have, they're basically just super thin, rolled up leaves with that same waxy coating to stop them from drying out. And that classic pointy cone shape, that's a genius design to let heavy snow just slide right off so the branches don't snap. And this is where it all comes home, literally. You might think these forests are worlds away, but they are directly connected to our daily lives. That super strong hardwood from the deciduous forests, that becomes the furniture in our homes and the buildings we work in. And that versatile softwood from the coniferous forests, that gets turned into the pulp for paper and, yep, the very packing boxes that bring stuff to our door. So, what's the big takeaway here? Well, what we've seen is that every single forest type is like a living library, just filled with these incredible survival stories. And each story is perfectly tailored to its own unique environment. So let's just quickly recap the crucial points. First, forests are absolute masters of adaptation. The two main game plans are the always-on evergreens and the seasonal shedding deciduous trees. And they're not just out there in the wild. They provide essential stuff we use every single day, from our chairs to our paper. Each one is a unique, elegant solution to a very specific climate challenge. And all of this leaves us with one final and really important question. These forests have shown an absolutely incredible genius for adapting to the climates of the past. But now, as our global climate is shifting so rapidly, their ability to adapt is being put to the test like never before. So, which of these amazing strategies is going to be the one that writes the next chapter of survival? Now that is something for all of us to think about. Hey everyone, and welcome. So for today's explainer, we're going to take a journey a little off the beaten path. You know, we talk a lot about forests, and for good reason, but our planet is covered in so many other amazing, vital habitats that are just teeming with life. We're going to explore the massive grasslands, the super harsh deserts, and even the frozen polar regions to really get a feel for the wildlife that calls these places home. Our whole journey really starts with this simple, but honestly really powerful question from a character named Salima. Now, she was thinking about forests, but her question hits home everywhere. If these natural habitats just vanish, where does all the wildlife go? That's the big question we're going to keep in the back of our minds as we explore these incredible ecosystems. All right, so to start answering that question, let's dive into our first stop, the grasslands. And these are so much more than just empty fields of grass. They're these huge, complex ecosystems, and they basically come in two main flavors. First up, we've got the tropical grasslands. I want you to picture the classic African savanna. That's exactly what we're talking about here. You'll find them on either side of the equator, in spots that get just enough rain for these vast seas of grass to grow, but not quite enough for a dense forest to move in. Now, here's what's pretty wild about this. The grass itself, it is not like the grass in your front yard. In these tropical grasslands, it can grow unbelievably tall. We're talking up to 3 or even 4 meters. That is taller than a professional basketball hoop. Just imagine trying to see anything in that. And all that tall grass is absolutely crucial. It provides both food and the perfect cover for some of the most iconic animals on the planet. I mean, you've got massive elephants, huge herds of zebras, giraffes using that crazy height of theirs to peek over the top, and of course, predators like leopards using it for the perfect ambush. Okay, so let's move on to our second type, temperate grasslands. You'll find these a lot further from the equator, in what we call mid-latitudinal zones. Think of the prairies in North America or the steppes in Asia. The big difference here is the grass. It's way shorter, but it's also absolutely packed with nutrients. Putting them side by side like this really shows you the contrast. You've got the tropical grasslands near the equator with that towering grass, supporting animals like giraffes and zebras. Then you have the tempered grasslands, with their short, rich grass that's perfect for enormous grazing herds of bison and antelopes. Two totally different worlds, but both are grasslands. So from those wide-open plains, we're going to shift gears, big time. We're heading to environments that are at the absolute edge of survival. Let's see what life looks like when things get really, really tough. We'll start in the world's hot, dry deserts. We're talking scorching heat, hardly any rain, so the vegetation is pretty sparse. But don't let the apparent emptiness fool you. The animals that live here are absolute masters of survival, with these amazing adaptations to save every single drop of water. Okay, and now for a complete 180. We're going to take a huge leap from one end of the temperature scale to the complete opposite. From the hottest, driest places on Earth, we are now going to the planet's frozen poles. Welcome to the tundra. This isn't really a place so much as a type of ecosystem you find in extreme cold. The most important thing to know is that plants can only grow during a very, very short summer. The rest of the year, it's just way too cold for anything to happen. So what in the world can actually survive here? Well, you won't find any towering trees or tall grasses. The tundra is home to really hardy, low-lying plants like mosses, lichens that just cling to rocks for dear life, and a few really small shrubs that basically huddle close to the ground to stay warm. And just like the plants are adapted, you can bet the animals are too. So how do they survive these just brutal freezing conditions? The answer is pretty simple: insulation. They've evolved to have incredibly thick fur and thick skin, which is basically a natural parka that protects them from that relentless cold. And because of those amazing adaptations, the tundra is home to this whole suite of incredible survivors. You've got seals and walruses with their thick layers of blubber, the super furry musk oxen, and predators that are perfectly camouflaged for this world, like the Arctic owl, the snow fox, and of course, the incredible polar bear. You know, it's easy to think of these places as being really far away and exotic, but just to show you how widespread grasslands are, let's do a quick trip around the world. We've been using one general term, but people everywhere have their own local names for these vital ecosystems. So in East Africa, it's the savanna. Head over to Argentina and you'll hear about the pampas. In North America, it's the prairie. And then you have the veld in South Africa, the steppe in Central Asia, and even the downs in Australia. It just shows you how important they are to cultures all over the globe. So all of this brings us right back to where we started. We've seen this incredible diversity of life across all these different habitats, but now we have to face the challenges they're up against. And this is where we come back to Salima's question. The threat to forests is the exact same threat facing every habitat we've talked about today. People are clearing land for farms and cities, and that puts immense pressure on these ecosystems, pushing the wildlife that depends on them right to the very brink. So the crucial point we're left with is this. We've explored these fragile, beautiful worlds, from the savanna all the way to the tundra. We know what lives there, and we know the threats they face. The final question isn't really for me to answer, it's for all of us. How are we going to protect them for the future?